Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems, or movies or shows with a little bit of bite. I'm your host, Justin Steele, and tonight we are going to discuss 1996's Freeway, directed by Matthew Bright and starring Reese Witherspoon, Kiefer Sutherland, and Brooke Shields. As a modern retelling of the Little Red Riding Hood story, Vanessa Julia Lutz is a young woman with a tough life. After her mother and stepfather are arrested yet again, Vanessa decides to head out to her grandmother's house, but after her car breaks down, she accepts a ride with Bob Wolverton, a child psychologist with a dark past. Soon, the two will collide in a hilariously horrifying showdown. Freeway is a dark comedy that never shies away from a blunt and truthful look at a bleak reality. Although there is a clear late 90s feel to the film, Freeway holds up well today and illustrates that part within ourselves that when we see something horrifying, we either have to laugh or cry. Also joining me tonight is my fabulous co-host, Zena Dixon. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode. So excited to get to talk about Freeway with you tonight. Are you excited?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We've been waiting to do this for a while. We've been talking about it for a while, so this is great.
Well, and we were talking about beforehand, and I think that, because Twitter, we put it on Twitter today that we're going to do this episode, and I think it's going to be a nice relief for you and I to know that so many other people are fan of this movie, which will make us feel less guilty about not just how much we love it, but how much we love laughing at it, laughing with it, because it is a dark comedy. It definitely, I wouldn't say this would fall under like a typical horror movie category, even like psychological thriller, anything like we normally talk about on the show, but it definitely has like that sort of, it's an obvious, updating of the Little Red Riding Hood story.
Yes.
And which I feel like all fairy tales have their roots in horror, like whether it's child abuse, wicked stepmothers, etc. Like there's something horror to it all. So I feel like it is sort of appropriate. Now, again, where you had at the same time frame like Drew Barrymore's Ever After, which was an updating of the like Cinderella story,
Yes.
With in a romantic comedy, feminist, good way, like good like positive, like trying to give a positive message. You have on the other end of the spectrum the updating of Little Red Riding Hood via Reese Witherspoon as Vanessa Julia Lutz, better get her name right. And she is a part of the society that we like overlook. And Zena and I are gonna tell you how we each came into the movie, and we'll give you a non-spoiler review. But then we are gonna then give some spoilery stuff so we can talk freely about it. But the first time I came to it, I think I was watching, it was like HBO late night. I was like, all right, let's see what's going on, what's on. And then this came up, and I'd always been a fan of Kiefer Sutherland from like Lost Boys and stuff like that. So I was like, all right. I had no idea who Reese Witherspoon was. Watching this movie, and it was not at all what I thought it was gonna be, at all. And I don't think anybody could be, for the first time through, quite prepared with what movie this is gonna be. But it is this. It asks the question. People who have no sense of like what's going on in the world because they live maybe sheltered lives or a more protected, privileged life will ask the question of like, how can these kids be so bad? What is going on? And this movie shows how a child, because she is essentially a child, she's about 16 in the movie, but how we can go so bad, how things can go so wrong, because the movie starts right off pointing out that this is like an illiterate girl.
Mm-hmm.
But as you watch the movie, you realize she is like razor sharp, very intelligent, and you're almost like, wow, if she had had any advantage as a child with her prostitute mother, her pedophile stepfather, if she had any chance, she would be like at Harvard, which,
Right.
Elle Woods, Reese Witherspoon, Legally Blonde, that's who she would have been with any sort of advantage in life. But she had nothing. And yet, even though she's illiterate, she clearly like has a negative, she tries to be positive, but there's all these negative external forces. She still is smart and razor sharp and astute and observant. So anyway, so the first time I watched it, it was late night HBO, loved it. didn't quite know what to do with it because I was about 14 years old when I watched it. And then a few years, like 6 years later, I was working at a Chi-Chi's. A girl that I worked with there, Melissa. Hi, Melissa, if you're watching. She and I were like, we bonded over that in Teen Witch. And we used to quote it nonstop because as you and I were discussing, and I want to hear some of your favorite quotes, but we used to walk out all the time being like, I ain't no trick baby. Or, like you said, like, I don't want to take it away from you, your quote, but it is one of my favorite too about the ugly stick. And just there's so many like quotes in this movie. Like when she's literally bashing this girl's nose. This girl comes up to her in like a detention center and is all like, hey girl, what you doing? About to like attack her. And Vanessa like turns around and just like, my name, she has this phone. My name is Vanessa Julia Lutz, bam. And you're just like, what? So we always had a blast, but it is horrifying, but it is a dark comedy and it's full of laughs and I love it. But that's what I think about it for the non-spoilery sort of thing. Zena, tell me how you came into it, some of your favorite quotes and what you thought.
Okay. Well, kind of like you, I watched this when I probably shouldn't have watched it. I don't even remember how old I was. 8, 9? I don't know. But I watched it
really young.
Yes, and I didn't understand it, but I remember even back then I didn't know if it was funny or not, but I would find myself laughing at certain things. But at the same time, like her life is kind of just sad because kind of like what you said, she really is, she's smart, like she has those type of senses where it's like, she knows how to get herself out of trouble, even though she did find herself in more trouble, if that makes sense. And honestly, she couldn't help where she came from. She couldn't help that was her family. Those are the people who, who she knew, who was a part of her life. It is a very well-made, fantastic story about this young girl who is on her way to her grandma's house. So that's why, with the whole Little Red Riding Hood thing, I think that kind of fits it perfectly. But at the same time, again, it is still a very uncomfortable movie. It's uncomfortable. It's a bit disturbing, and it's very violent. And I mean, I love it. I do feel like it's overall like a clever movie. And I have no idea how I really came across it. I probably watched it with maybe some of my siblings. We just kind of randomly watched it. And then I remember I kind of forgot about it, as a teenager in my early 20s. And then I rewatched it and I realized like, oh my gosh, this is funny. I didn't just, sometimes you watch something so great and you kind of just forget about it. And quote wise, so again, look who's got beaten with an ugly stick and you're so ugly, Bob. And then also like the one that, but just before we started like recording, I just kept on giggling with the guard who was just like, you didn't have to kill me when she like slashed him. But because it's just like, first off, if you were dead, you wouldn't be attacked. And she said, I didn't kill you, you dirty little person.
It like annoys her like, you're not dead.
Yeah, you're not dead. Like, so it's just, I don't know. But again, it's like the situations, it's very serious, because her mother is a junkie and a prostitute, and then her stepfather's trying to like, sexually assault her, and he's on drugs, and she doesn't know her father, and then her grandma doesn't even know that she exists, so it is sad. And then what I didn't understand though, which I'm sure we'll get to, like the only great thing that she kind of has in her life is her boyfriend, Chopper. But yeah, that's pretty much overall what I feel about it. I feel like, again, it's just a fantastic story. You feel sympathy for Vanessa, but you can't help but keep on rooting for her because she is a tough girl.
Yeah, just to kind of add on with that and something you said, as we transition now to more like spoilery stuff from here on out, like you said, it is a really sad situation. And I think that what it comes down to, why we're uncomfortable, it's forcing us to face things that are uncomfortable. And in this situation, it's almost kind of like, do you laugh or do you cry? Right. And so what you end up doing is laughing because it is funny, because I feel like anybody in her situation, she knows that like these awful things are happening to her and she has got like the short end of the stick, etc. But she's also trying to be optimistic, and she would probably laugh at some of the aspects of her life because she's a human being. She doesn't want to be pitied. She doesn't want to be treated like garbage, like a garbage person, as Bob calls her. But she definitely doesn't want pity. And I think like it is one of those situations where it's either you laugh or you cry. And I think his name, the director, was Matthew Bright.
Yes.
Yeah, Matthew Bright. You know, I just was watching the audio commentary. I didn't even know my DVD had an audio commentary to it, so I have never watched it before, and I didn't get to finish it because this was only about an hour ago. But you know, as he was talking in it, you know, he seems to be definitely a proponent of feminism and women's rights. Like he wasn't like overt about it, but he definitely said this is a woman's story, and I mean, not just like the poverty. I mean, it is. She's facing poverty. She is facing sexism. She's facing. I mean, it's just never ending. And I do want to make sure we talk about the cast and stuff. Kiefer Sutherland, though, just on the other side of it, this movie, because of what Matthew Bright did, it really does show you both sides of it. You know, like his wife, Brooke Shields, she's looking at like Vanessa as like this insect, this creature. Like, how dare you try to reach up into my life and affect me? And look what you did. But then when she finds out, like, oh, Bob really is this horrible human being, you know, she can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And but it shows you kind of both sides of it. And it really is, even if you like, you think like Bob and Brooke Shields, those characters have it all, but really they're also a situation you laugh or you cry at it because you know, she's living a false life. Bob is putting on this face, and he really does. I feel like Kiefer Sutherland had those sort of wolfish characteristics. Like, I feel like he's the perfect wolf.
Right.
I do want to talk, while you were talking about the mom and stuff, Amanda Plummer, though, I am always really excited to see her in movies. I feel like she's not in enough. You know, some of my favorites, So I Married an Axe Murderer was one of my favorites that she was in. Obviously, she was in Pulp Fiction. And she really, in this role, Matthew Bright was saying on the audio commentary that she, you know, people when they were asking to work with her, they were warning her about her energy, about her stuff, and he's like, no, she played Ramona Lutz to the T, like beyond how great he knew that role would be. I mean, she's a horrible person, but like, I don't know, all the actors and stuff in this, I don't know how much they were aware of how funny it would be. I think they knew, but like, you have some real gems in there, and I just really, really loved the performances, as well as that whole like laugh or cry.
Right. Right. And I agree with you with the acting, especially even with, okay, well, Reese Witherspoon, she's amazing. I think I don't remember if she did, what was it called, Man on the Moon before this or after or like around the same time, because this was just a complete turn, because she was a sweet little girl in that other movie, and then we see her in this, you know, and it's just like she looks great. Like, she's just really cute in the movie, but she did like an incredible performance because you are rooting for her. She doesn't come from a great situation, but that doesn't make her a bad person, even though she's done some terrible things. And even as far as it goes with Kiefer Sutherland, he's great. He is just great. He makes the perfect villain. And, you know, when you see him, he looks like a regular guy. Like, he seemed like he really did want to help her. But I remember when I first watched it, without even knowing anything about it, when I first saw him, I was like, oh, that's nice of him. He seemed like a you know, regular guy. You know, the saying, a wolf in sheep's clothing, you know? Is that it? That's the saying?
Yeah, no, that's it. That's it.
So, you know, he seemed like a nice guy. And I'm thinking, okay, this is really nice of him. I would most likely never get in the car with him like she did, just picked up her little basket and went in the car. But you know, at first, you know, that conversation while they were in the car, it just became more like disturbing over time, and it made me uncomfortable. But there was just something off about him, like even the way he was doing his voice and staying calm and like looking at her, while it was just like great. And even though her role is super small in this, Brittany Murphy.
Oh yeah, yes, love her in this.
Honestly, I wanted to know more about her character.
Yeah, I would watch a whole movie about her.
Right? So it's just, like you said, like, you know, even with Brooke Shields, it's just like No, she realized what kind of person her husband, who he was, and like you said, she couldn't handle it. Like, what more could she do? And what's crazy is they lived together. This whole time he was doing it right under your nose. Like, I mean, she probably felt horrible and
Yeah.
like you said, just couldn't handle it. But seriously, what a great movie. I do feel like the director, he did a great job storytelling wise because he also wrote it. I don't know about you, but I haven't checked out any of his other movies. And I know we'll probably talk about it more, but I've never watched the sequel.
I haven't seen the sequel either. No, somebody mentioned on Twitter too. I didn't know Natasha Lyonne was in it, so that makes me want to watch it more.
Right.
But yeah, no, I haven't seen it either. I hear it's more like a Hansel and Gretel type of updating. So
Okay, well that could be a thing. But yeah, like seriously, like what a great cast because with
yeah,
this type of movie, I'm sure that people didn't expect it. And you know, when I was reading some stuff on it, like I've noticed that either people really love it like we do, or people just really just they don't like
oh,
it.
I'm sure. Because it forces people to look at things they don't want to look at, and
Right.
it not only does that, but it'll also it affects people, I think, in a way that like people don't want to look at it, but it's also the type of people that are normally like wanting to be like, let's treat each other better, let's do this. They almost think like it's making fun of that. And instead, I think it's incredibly effective because it's forcing people to look at it, look at the horror of the things we do to each other and do we do to our children,
Mm-hmm.
and some hard facts that we don't want to face. But
Yeah.
they're also willing to like make a joke out of it, make it funny, because that's also part of life. Is you have these situations that are horrifying, and yes, we want sympathy and empathy, but we also sometimes have to laugh at it. We have to be
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, I got to get through. Like, how else am I get through? I can't sit here sad all the time. Like
Exactly.
Vanessa, she can't sit there crying all the time. At a certain point, she gets up and fights and really fights. I also love her blind optimism. Like she's wanting to go to her grandmother's house. This grandmother that she's never met, walking through a trailer park. Hey, grandma. Hey, grandma. I'm here, grandma. We just I do want to talk about Vanessa's like intelligence too. Just how like the movie through Vanessa is like showing the hypocrisy of society, of people like Bob, like the justification that they feel in taking with somebody like that, with taking somebody like Vanessa, taking advantage of her because she almost deserves it from their point of view.
Right.
But like, but he also like it's the rape justification of like him saying to Vanessa, it's just so intrinsic to your nature that you don't even understand. You're like turning me on, so I definitely deserve to rape and kill you, or in Bob's case, kill and rape you.
Right.
And like he's like trying to say like it's okay because society is on my side and
Mm-hmm.
society is on his side. Up until the moment the one guy finds her hair, I mean, it's all Bob's show. It's like he's the one to be pitied.
Right. And you know, again, I do feel like I agree with you in that this movie touches on so many things. There's racism, discrimination, classism, you know, that's all mixed up in there. And it's just like, again, she doesn't, not saying that she doesn't know any better. It's just like this is what she was taught. This is what she,
Yeah.
you know, what she saw. Like even with her dating Chopper, and she was dating a black guy. And I remember one of the detectives, he was just really intrigued by that, you know, that she was
Right.
with him. And it's just like, well, you know, it's probably because not because he's black, but because he probably accepted her for who she is, you know? Like it seemed like he was used to different types of personalities, and just the fact that she was someone who knew how to defend herself. She was a strong, tough girl. And I think that that's what made them like go together. But I also had a question. I've always wondered this when I rewatched it earlier this week. Why didn't she just stay with him? You know, I know that he was obviously living with his mother.
Right.
Just thinking like nobody would have to know, because it's just like, I mean, obviously that made sense because obviously when I first watched it as a kid, I didn't understand why she was acting, you know, just going ham on people. But then it's just like, okay, she's also really hurt. You know, I think that she's still being herself, but when she found out what happened with, you know, she called him her fiance, like they were together. So, you know, that probably did something to, well, clearly it did something to her.
Well, first off, that's also another quote that we used to always say, my fiance. We'd be again at Chi Chi's all the time. But I just, I 100% think that you're right. It is a question. I can give a sort of like, well, maybe this was her logic, but I do think like in that world, Chopper probably could have protected her, probably could have taken her in somehow, some way. And I also think that a lot of it had to do with like her mother. I think she loved her mother incredibly, like put her on a high pedestal, knowing what a woman, like knowing that she did not deserve to be on a high pedestal. And I think that she wanted that sort of maternal love, and she was hoping to find that with her grandmother, you know? And so that's the reason I could think of like why she would, again, I think that you're right. It would 100% be logical. Like, I feel like Chopper is the type of guy that could protect her, and clearly he's the one person that like totally accepted her and was open with her. I
Right.
think though, like it just goes to show how telling, because the one detective, when he was surprised about Chopper and Vanessa, I feel like he couldn't believe that this girl was actually being honest about it. Like he thought she was this type of girl, but when she told him that she's making these racist comments just to get under his skin, I don't think he could believe that maybe that was the case. And then he was stunned by it. And but it's one of those things, because he then went to then go get the hair, or he went back to the site. It made him re-question everything. Okay, I think like he's the character in this movie that is supposed to represent how we could change, how
Mhm.
we could, if we just start listening to other people and like not just putting them into these positions. And I feel like he was stunned because Vanessa told him very clearly, she's like, I'm only saying this because I knew it'd piss you off. And he
Right.
doesn't, I don't think he can believe that until he's like, oh, maybe this girl is telling the truth. And it's almost like he's the character that can represent society, like, hey, let's stop for a minute. And if we do kind of, well, what is this girl saying? And then all of a sudden,
Right.
it's the truth. It's a domino effect of, hey, we found out, wait, Bob is the bad guy. The wife doesn't know anything. We got to get to the Vanessa. And the only criticism I really have with this movie, and it would be with any movie like this, I get so frustrated with all the characters that don't believe her, like the judge stuff, who's all like, oh, I 100% I'm going to try her as an adult. I want to know what they were like when they found out that Vanessa was telling the truth. Although I
Exactly.
guarantee I guarantee I'd be even more pissed off, because just like how it is in society, they'll find some way for that cognitive dissonance to not think they were like, well, I was going off of the facts. They'll never be like, oh my God, I did this to this girl.
Even with the police officers and with the detectives, why did you not do your job and investigate? Just go
Yeah.
back to where she said, and you guys would have found her hair. You know,
Yeah.
all could have been avoided. So I definitely understand what you're saying with that, and I get your point on that one.
Yeah, I don't think that, because Mike, well, I don't know why I can't keep his name in my Matthew Bright, the director. I think that he wrote it in like a weekend, so I don't think he put a lot of like symbolic depth into it. But I do think like each of these characters, it's very satirical. It's a representation of like this hyper reality, but it is reality, and these characters all do fit into these sort of tropes or these characterizations. Like you have the prostitute mother, the pedophile stepfather, the serial killer, but like these characters all exist. This is all really happening. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, the movie itself definitely has still that late 90s vibe to it, especially with her like outfits and stuff. But overall, I mean, it's still very much relevant today, and in some ways predictive. And because we didn't take, I mean, I think the movie wanted to make us laugh, but because we didn't take it seriously, we still are now in the positions that we are facing still today as a society.
I agree. I was gonna say, just again, I did like that scene when she double slapped the detective,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
hit him with a chair.
Yeah.
And
Excuse me.
the other
Yes.
the other detective was just sitting there. So I mean,
Right?
honestly, he kind of deserved it. Like,
It's one gem after another, Zena. This movie, from the beginning to the end, is just gem. Like one of my other favorite sequences, because the movie, it takes you on this ride, and right when it's about to lose steam, something else will happen. Like my favorite scene is when she does get the guy in the car where she's like, and this is horrifying, but she's out there like processing herself and she's like, El Sexo, another quote for us. And she gets the guy in there and you can tell when he's like saying what he wants and it's so crude, like he's offended her, and you see her eyes kind of flicker and you're
Yeah.
like, oh no, oh no. We know what she's isn't gonna go good for him, which is good because he's gross. But they're in the alley and she pulls out the gun, but she's wearing too, if you watch, she's so intense and stuff, but she's got this little like jelly bracelet on and stuff, and it's so the essence of Vanessa, the little girl that she doesn't want to lose inside, but
Mhm.
she is kind of like, you was only gonna pay me $5, like pissed because this guy who she's planning to screw over was just another guy that was planning to screw her over, another guy that was gonna take advantage of her, and she says it clearly and beautifully. He's like, "Why are you doing this?" She's like, "Because the world owes me, and I'm pissed off."
Yeah.
And it's so true. The world does owe her, and she should be pissed off. And it's like, again, the question that the movie's asking of the people, the so-called well-wishers of the world, how can these children end up like this? This is how. This is how they end up like this. And what do you want them to do? Just roll over and take it? At some point, they're going to fight back. At some point, they're going to be like, enough,
Yeah.
enough. And good for her. Like, I cheer for her at the end of this movie. Like, when she's like taking control. I mean, even in though, like I said, it's so hard to like be like, this movie is so symbolic or this or that. It really is. But you
Mhm.
have the sequences in the jail or this or that that are so horrifying. And I would like to talk again about Brittany Murphy, unless you want to add on to that. But I'm so glad you remember to bring up Brittany Murphy because she is like my favorite, one of my favorite parts in the movie.
She's the best. But yes, just real quick, I agree. It's just like I love when she said that when she said that the world owes her. And it's just
Yeah,
kind of like look at everything that happened to her at that point.
yeah,
No, where it's just like even with the social worker, she didn't even want to check in with the grandma. Maybe give her a call.
yeah,
She clearly had a terrible experience, with her own life, with her mother and her stepfather. Now just give her a chance because it's unfortunate because she's one of those girls kind of like what you said where it's like no, she'll most likely not go to Harvard, because people are going to be judging her and she may
yeah,
not even have those same opportunities to do that. So, like you though, from the start, I was always rooting for her when
yeah.
she was beating up the cop, when she was beating up Mosquito, when she, taking on Bob. It's just like you just want her to win. You want her
Yeah.
to win. Like just give her a chance. But yes, we can definitely talk about Rhonda, Brittany Murphy.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever had tar? I just can't understand how somebody could ever go through life and not be into girls. Like it goes to show again that young cast because she just came off of Clueless. Like the brilliance of what a lost treasure we all lost when we lost Brittany Murphy though. But like her performance in this is just like it's a star-making performance because it's so small and tiny, but you remember her.
You do. And it's crazy because it's just kind of like how she was delivering those lines. And I know that we talked about this before because we kind of spoke about this with intensity, with the acting and intensity. But it's kind of like I know that it's, someone's job, like when they're an actor, it's your job to act. But sometimes some people in their acting, it doesn't really hit. But with Brittany Murphy's character,
Yeah.
like the way she was doing her hands when she was talking and like her eyes and her face, and it's just like, oh, she just gave me really crazy vibes.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that she was only in there. What did she say? Why did she say that she was in there? If
Well,
you
I think like she got in trouble for something, but it's because she had tar in her cooch, I believe. For I feel like I could say that with talking about Freeway, but
right,
like I just like it was something like that. Like I don't know, but just to piggyback onto what you're saying, it almost seems like they picked this girl up out of the street. You would never know if you weren't super familiar with Ty from Clueless. This girl, you thought they like grabbed her off the street. She became and like she was a part of it, like oh But yeah, I don't know. She had because I don't know. She had made tar, and then they found it on her in an inappropriate place. I don't know. So she was like so excited because she obviously wasn't going to be in there long as Vanessa, so she couldn't sleep. But yeah, even with her and with Vanessa, when she like almost attacks Vanessa, but like Vanessa's like, we can make out, but no effing because I'm straight. Like, oh, but you know that's like probably a reality. Like they're looking for love. It's all these girls looking for love, not from dirty old men that think they can
Right.
take it from her, but like just pure love. Like, love me for who I am. Don't be somebody trying to get something out of me
Right.
from it, other than love,
Right. Yeah, just think that she
Um,
just had some affection and she didn't really mind the girl. Rhonda would listen to her. So
right. The whole sequence though in the prison, I just think like she makes some interesting points, and I'm not saying anything to anybody watching who is a jailer or in the prison system, and I just think again it's questions that are being asked, not necessarily. I mean, Vanessa would accuse them, but it asks questions of like, well, why do we do this? Why is this like the what I'm getting at is like the warden, the warden lady. I mean, she's constantly like deliriously like smiling like at the camera and stuff when like Vanessa's being like swearing at herself. She's like, oh, Vanessa, but it's like creepy. And you are kind of like, well, how did this woman become in this life,
I always thought that woman was so weird too, like too peppy, and that was very
Yeah.
strange. I
She
didn't
loved
know
her job.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was a place that was for like high, like if it was like high security, like for the top, like really horrible people. Because it's weird that Brittany Murphy's character was there. I assumed that Brittany Murphy's character, we'll call her Rhonda, her character, I assumed that she did something so bad as to why she's there. Even seeing like the scars on her face. And then, Mosquito, wasn't she like
Right.
gang leader? So it's just like, why would they, if she, it didn't really seem like from what Rhonda said, what she did, that seems small.
Yes.
So it's just like, why would they put them in the same space? So I think, well, never mind, because they were transporting Mosquito, these two sisters and Vanessa, someplace. So, okay, never mind. I kind of answered my own question,
Well,
I believe.
I think you make a really interesting point. I don't know much about the juvenile detention system or the prison system, thank God, but I have a feeling, that probably does happen where it's the underestimation of women, and they probably do kind of throw all walks of life like with these women because they're women,
Right.
thinking like women do crazy things, but they'll be fine together. Like, whereas I feel like boys, I feel like it gets more like you're going here because of this, here because of this. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did just kind of, it's another form of sexism. Like, well, yeah, this woman may have killed somebody and this woman made some drugs, but they're the same. Throw them in there. They're all women. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some truth to that. Not to make it, because why not? I am going to make everything a feminist issue. Like, why not? I believe
Yeah.
that it is, the sexism nonstop. I mean, that's the point of the movie. It's the poverty, it's the sexism, it's the racism, it's the classism, it's everything.
Yeah.
And which is why I think it is appropriate to talk about a film like Freeway on an episode of a horror show like this, because it's real life horror. This is stuff that happens every day. This isn't some gothic castle that somebody's traveling to. It's not the boogeyman spiritual in the closet. Or an exorcism. This is something a little girl. Could you imagine her as a little girl? That went from here to here to here. I mean, you can, it's like, well, do you blame it on the parents? But we don't know Ramona's life. How did Ramona get into this life? Has
Mhm.
it been this systematic abuse that has been generationally affecting the Lutz women year after year after
Right.
year? I mean, look at the men that are in their lives. Either they stick around because they're awful, or they get killed prematurely young, like Chopper.
Mm.
Like it's, I don't know. I want to make some sort of point, but what I basically am saying is that like Freeway is one of those rare movies that is simple incredibly enjoyable, incredibly entertaining, incredibly horrifying, incredibly hard to watch, incredibly amazing. You know, it's all of that. And I think that's what film is supposed to do. I think that's what cinema is supposed to do. You
Mhm.
know, what are your general thoughts about that?
I mean, I agree with you. I feel like this is the kind of movie I feel like everyone should watch at least once. Just because, like you were saying earlier, it makes you look at the ugly. It makes
Yeah,
you look at things that you may not like or may not want to see. Just because she comes from a certain area or she talks a certain way or this is who her mother is, she can't really help that. She can't help her upbringing, you know.
yeah,
And sometimes, there are people who can where it's just like say if I'm hoping like at the end because it's like since like the detective they believed her, so hopefully they'll make sure that she's taken care of.
I
You know,
hope so.
I even think about the police officer, like the woman police officer from
Yes,
the
yes,
beginning. You,
yes.
as a woman, you caught this man on top of her. You see her environment, and she asked you, "Well, I can stay with you for a couple of days," and she lied and said, "No, we're not allowed to do that." But then Vanessa called her out and just say, "Oh, that's
Yeah,
not true. Just tell me if you don't want to." And she said, "I don't want to." Like that, it was funny, but it wasn't.
yeah.
Because it's just like
Oh,
okay, that's a woman that slammed the door in her face. But then you even have the social worker who didn't even want to check in with the grandmother. So even though yes, she did something
yeah.
kind of not too smart by handcuffing her to the bed, she did what she had to do.
She did what she had to do.
Yeah, and then once again with Bob's wife, like, listen, just you have to look at it from her point of view. Like, I get, like, we see what he looks like, but what did you do to her to make her do that? And I understand that that's her husband, but it's just like, okay, I would really want the detectives to like take a look at this, you know? Just take a look, like investigate, do your job. And then again, I can't stop thinking about that quote, like, Bob, is that you? You're so ugly. Like it's just
Oh my God, look who got hit with the ugly stick.
it
Jason, as much as we're going to academically talk about this. The movie's funny. I mean, it's funny.
is.
Those
It
lines
is.
and those quotes. But that's how, I mean, I think that's what makes us pay attention to it is like those moments. But oh, I love that. Like, I was so happy seeing us. I was so happy when you were funny. You found the movie funny. You found like the humor in it because it makes you feel bad for laughing, but that also just it makes you ask yourself, well, why? Because it is
Right.
funny and horrifying. But I really do want to talk with you about, I think, like the scene that really does make the whole movie, and that's the interaction between Vanessa and Bob in the car. You
Mhm.
know, from like the moment he picks her up to the moment it ends. I think you have like some truly great cinematic drama, horror, just great moments. And just what did you think about the whole car sequence? And what are your opinions about it?
It is very bizarre, very unpredictable. As I was saying earlier, when they were in the car at first, it's just like I was thinking, like with Bob, oh, this is a nice guy. But then as he started asking these questions, and it's the way he's asking it, even when he wasn't even getting vulgar with her, it just
Right,
didn't sit well with me. I guess because me now, older Zena, it's just like red flags, the alarms
right.
going off, like just creeper alert. But then it's just like, okay, well, with her, she really did feel like he was listening to her. But I do agree with you. Like I feel like it is a great like cinematic moment. It is a great scene. There are even the way it's shot, they still engaging, because it's just nothing but dialogue, but we're still
Right,
intrigued. They didn't have to do anything crazy because even when she was explaining certain things, they didn't have to do like a cutaway shot and like show scenes or which I
yeah.
really appreciated. They still had us as the viewers very much engaged. So I love it, but it is very disturbing, and that's yeah, very disturbing, and it left me very uncomfortable. So, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
I think it's yeah, I just think it's really powerful. I think the rest of the movie rests upon the effectiveness of that scene. And I just think that like what Reese Witherspoon brings to it, what Kiefer Sutherland brings to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's this sort of like dance from the moment that they like decide they're going to go on this journey together. Their lives are going to be irrevocably changed. And I like that, like, you know, he does make points, and there is like lessons to be learned about with strangers, as in like how somebody, you can understand how a guy like Bob got away with it for so long, pulling in somebody like Vanessa by being like, you know, it's easier to talk to a stranger. You
Right.
know, I'm not going to judge you. I don't know you. So she comes into that. But then like she starts to open up to him. Um, then it turns around and it's, you know, finally you start to see his true colors. But like just when you think he's got her, she pulls out the gun. Like I just love it. It's like this nonstop. It's like I just, when I think of the movie, that's the sequence I mainly think about when I'm not just like quoting it, like because well, it is in that scene. I ain't no trick baby. Like just the way that like in that scene, even with like a knife at her and the threat of death, she
Mm-hmm.
still stands up for hers. I ain't no trick baby. Like let's get the facts straight. You could talk about my mom, but I can't talk about your mom. I
Yeah.
mean, she constantly like, I feel like at the time, you know, Kiefer Sutherland was definitely the star of the film, but you could see Reese Witherspoon, and I know that it's easy to talk in retrospect to be like, oh, you knew she was going to be a star, but I feel like you do see it very
Yes,
clearly. Like, look at what she did. It's a pleasurable movie, even though it's horrifying.
it is. It is. And you know, I'm sorry, another quote. Another quote that came to mind, you know, one of the detectives, they tell Vanessa that, you know, oh, you know that Bob, he's in critical condition, you know, he's not dead. And she's just like, oh yeah, right. I shot him so many, so you're admitting it,
Shot
you
him
know.
so many times.
So it's just like, gosh, like,
Oh yeah, right. I shot him so many times.
right.
Like no conscious effort of like what she's doing, telling these cops this.
Right.
Like it's a lie. Like I don't know what game
And
you're
it's
playing.
sad
So much
because
like
it's just,
just or even when she's like it'll be subtle moments where she's hugging she's like the woman police officer just said, I'm not gonna take you in, starts leaving, and she's like, oh yeah, thanks for ruining my life when the security guard comes up. Social services woman. She's like, Vanessa, you know, she's just doing her job. And she's like, she ruined my life. And then so the woman comes up to give her a hug and she's like, I just hate pigs so much. Like it's just so like it's so sweet. And she's just saying something so like, I just hate
yeah.
those pigs so much. Like the movie, I mean, I don't think there's one scene that doesn't have a line that you can use or a performance that's gonna make you not laugh.
And it's kind of like, you know, not that I'm trying to defend what she did, kind of what we spoke about. We just, as the viewers, you see it, you know. And what's unfortunate, you know, even when she was telling those cops, you know, that she shot him so many times, Bob did tell her they're not going to believe you.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I mean, again, I just feel like she just had to do what she had to do, you know.
I think so too. I agree. I'm not condoning or saying this or that, but like I think she did what she had to do too.
Right.
Because what like she said, she actually was like taking Bob's advice in that scene where he basically was like, they're not gonna believe you, not gonna believe you. So she realized, okay, he's telling the truth. So because I think she would have taken him to the cops. Bob almost kind of like dug his own grave by being like, they're not gonna believe you. Because then she's like, well, that means that I have to kill you. Like
Right.
she didn't say that to him, but she was basically like thinking, okay, well then you're dead now.
If you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend checking it out. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's funny. You know, I feel like this is it's kind of like a really cool take on like the Little Red Riding Hood, you
Yeah.
know, view.
I guarantee, I agree completely too. It's a fun ride. People will enjoy it. It is funny. It's a quick, easy little, like, it's just something different. But I definitely think audiences, like, I don't want, like, there's a lot to think about, and there's a lot that makes you think in this movie, but I don't want audiences or, you know, people watching this thinking, like, well, wait a minute, this movie's really heavy. It's not. I think it delivers stuff. It delivers a lot of heavy stuff in a really entertaining way. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House. Have you seen Freeway? What are some of your favorite quotable lines from it? Because I know they're out there. Let me thank Zena Dixon for joining us tonight. You can find Zena over at realqueenofhorror.com, Wicked Horror, or at YouTube under her Real Queen of Horror moniker. And I'm Justin Steele. You can find me over at Wicked Horror, 401 Pop Culture, or on Twitter at Wicked Horror Justin. Thanks for joining me, Zena. I had a blast talking about Freeway. Because I ain't no trick baby.
I knew you were going to do that.